This is the Unit 8 Pre-AP test review. I'm going to divide it into two parts, so this will be part 1. All right, so it says write and solve an equation to determine the value of x in each figure below. So first we need to look at what kind of angles these are because they're across from each other. These are considered to be vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent, which means they're equal. They have the same measure. So I can write an equation that's going to allow me to solve for y. So 11y minus 36 is equal to 63. Right, and then this is just an equation. I'm going to solve it like I always do, split it in half. I'm isolating the variable by doing the inverse operation, so the opposite of subtracting is adding. I want to do that on both sides of my equation. These go away. This is just 11y now equal to 99. Right, and then I'm going to continue to solve, split it in half, isolate y. I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing, and then I end up with y equal to 9. Okay. Again, with any equation, you can go back and check yourself. If I do 9 times 11 here, 99 minus 36, I'm going to get 63. So that's going to show me that these are equal like I was intending they should be. All right, on number 2, these are complementary angles. These lines, angles together are forming a right angle, which I know is 90 degrees. So when you add two measures to get 90, that's the definition of complementary. They also happen to be adjacent because they share the side or this fence right here. All right, so since these two have to add up to 90, and I'm just trying to solve for x, which is in this angle right here, a couple ways I could do this. What I'm going to do is go ahead and first subtract 90 minus 35. And so that gives me 55. Okay, so that tells me this angle here has to be 55 degrees, but it doesn't tell me what x is. So what I'm going to do is use that to write the equation 2x minus 5 equals 55, and then I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to isolate x. I'm going to get rid of the subtraction by adding. All right, so these go away. This is 2x equal to 60. I'm going to cut it in half again. Isolate x by dividing, this time by 2. X is equal to 30. Right, and number 3, it says to identify the pair of angles shown as complementary, supplementary, or neither. So when I look at these two angles right here, I need to know what their sum is. So if I add 139 plus 41, 9 plus 1 is 10, carry your 1, 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 4 is 8, and bring down the 1. So since these add up to 180 degrees, that tells me that they are supplementary, because that's what it means to be supplementary. And don't forget, one way to remember that is because the word supplementary starts with the letter S, you can sort of make that S into an 8, which helps you remember the 180 degree part. All right, on number 4, I want to go ahead and add these up as well. So 27 plus 63 is equal to 10, 1, 2, 3, plus 6 is 9. So these add up to 90 degrees, and I know that that would make them complementary, because that's the definition of complementary, two angles that add up to 90 degrees. And if for some reason you added these and you got a number other than 90 or 180, then your answer would be neither. All right, number 5, it says angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. All right, so remember there is a like a little hint for remembering complementary, just like we remember supplementary. So we know complementary starts with a C. We can add a line here, make it look like a 9. So we know that complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So if I'm just trying to find the second angle, then I'm going to subtract angle 1 from 90 degrees. So 90 minus 54 gives me 8. So 10 minus 4 is 6. 8 minus 5 is 3. So the measure of angle 2 would be 36 degrees. All right, and number 6, angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical angles. This time they're vertical. The measure of angle 1 is 21 degrees. What is the measure of angle 2? All right, so I'm looking at something like this where I have angle 1 here and angle 2 here. I know they're vertical, and they're telling me this one is 21 degrees. Right, vertical angles have angles that are congruent. So that tells me that if this one is 21, so is this one. So the measure of angle 2 is just 21 degrees. Number 7 says if it says the angles shown are supplementary, what is the value of x? So again, supplementary, I'm remembering that S can be made into an 8. So I know these angles add up to 180 degrees. So a couple of ways I could do this. Since I know they have to equal 180, I could write it like this: 2x plus 80 plus 40 equals 180, and then solve it that way by going ahead and adding 80 plus 40. So that would be 2x plus 120 equals 180. And then if I solve this, I'm going to subtract the 120 from both sides. This goes away. This is 2x equals 60. And if I continue to solve, I'm going to divide by 2. So x equals 30. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be knowing that these have to equal 180. I could just start by subtracting the 40 first. And that gives me 140. And then writing the equation, so 2x plus 80 equals 140, because I'm going to know that this whole angle has to be the 140. So I could say that those two are equal and then solve it that way. You're still going to get the same answer, whichever way you do it. If I cut this in half and subtract 80, then 2x equals 60, and you can see that when I divide by 2, I'm going to get 30 also, right? So many ways to do the same problem. That's just 2. All right, number 8, it says in the figure, identify 2 and 3 as adjacent, vertical, or neither. So 2 and 3 right here. I can see that these two angles, okay, share this side right here. So these would be adjacent angles. They share a fence. They are neighbors, like Miss Clickman's neighbor, Jason, in college. So I would say they're adjacent. You can't be adjacent and vertical. So if I was asked to identify vertical angles, I would look for the ones that are cross and that don't share a side or don't share a fence. So these two are neighbors. 2 and 4 share a point, but they're across from each other, so that would make them vertical. I can also say 1 and 3 are vertical, but then 2 is adjacent with 3, but it's also adjacent with 1. So lots of ways to look at that. But since they asked for 2 and 3, those would be adjacent. Okay, moving on. It says, number 9, determine the value of x. So again, I can see that these two angles are forming a right angle, which means they add up to 90 degrees. They're adjacent and they're complementary because they add up to 90. So again, I have a couple of ways I can do this. I can add them together and say 5x plus 25 has to equal 90. Solve it that way. Or I could go ahead and just subtract 25 from 90 and then set that answer equal to 5x. So I have this written down. I'm going to go ahead and solve it this way. I'm going to subtract 25 to isolate x. So that gives me 5x equal to 10 minus 5 is 5. 8 minus 2 is 6. Right? Then I need to divide by 5. If I divide 5 into 65, it'll go once. When I subtract, I get 1 and bring down my 5. 5 will go into 15 3 times. So x is equal to 13. Again, I could just start by subtracting 90 minus 25, and then whatever that is, setting equal to 5x. So choose which way you prefer. All right, number 10, classify the angle by its sides and by its angles and by its sides. So I have to choose one of these 3. So acute, right, and obtuse. When I'm trying to identify it by the angles, I want to look at the largest angle. That's really what determines if the triangle is going to be acute, right, or obtuse. I can see that it doesn't have a right angle. I would be looking for that little box if it were a right angle. I know that obtuse means more than 90 degrees. So I can see that this angle right here is more than 90 degrees. So, so that automatically means this is an obtuse triangle. Yes, these two angles are acute, but they have to all be acute in order to be an acute triangle. All right, I'm looking at the sides: equilateral, isosceles, and scalene. This one, they didn't give me any clues. They didn't include any hash marks, but I can just tell from looking that these sides are not the same. None of these are the same. And so when that happens, if you have no equal sides, then your triangle is scalene as well. It's obtuse. Okay, so number 11, it says classify the triangle, again, by its angles and its sides. So again, I'm going to start by looking at my angles. 60, 60, 60, they made it easy for me, and they're all the same. They're all less than 90. The largest is 60, and that is acute, so this is an acute triangle. I can tell that they're all the same because of the hash marks, also because all the angles are the same, so this means they're equilateral as well. All right, number 12, write and solve an equation to determine the value of x in the figure shown So this is a right triangle, I can tell because of the right angle here, which means that this angle right here is 90 degrees, even though they didn't tell me that, or they didn't write the number there. And this is not anything else besides being a right triangle. I can't tell for sure if this is isosceles or not, and so I can't assume that it is since they didn't tell me. So what I do know about triangles is that the sum of the angles in a triangle has to equal 180 degrees. So I know if I added these two angles here and then subtract it from 180, that would tell me what's left for this angle right here. So that's what I'm going to do. I can add 90 plus 32 and get 122. Okay, so if I subtract that from 180, I'm going to get 8. 7 minus 2 is 58. So that tells me that's what's left for this angle, 58. And since 58 is the same as 2x, I could set this equal to each other, cut it in half, divide by 2. So x would equal, if I'm not sure, divide it. 58 divided by 2. 2 will go into 5 twice. And then 2 will go into 18 9 times. All right, so x is 29. That's my answer there. I could also write it like this. I could say, all right, well, I know that 32 plus 90 plus 2x have to equal 180, since all three of these have to add up to 180, and then solve it that way. So I would start by simplifying this as much as I could. So I would end up adding these anyway. 122 plus 2x equals 180, and then I would just subtract the 122, divide by 2. So you're going to get the same answer either way. All right, and then 13 says determine the value of x and y in the figure shown below. So I can see that this is an isosceles triangle. So that tells me that the sides are equal. It also tells me that these angles are equal. Since I'm solving for x and y, I can only do one at a time. So I'm going to start with the sides. So this side is 10 inches, this side is y plus 9, but I know they're the same, which means they're equal. So that's my equation, 10 equals y plus 9. And then solving, I'm going to cut it in half, do the opposite of adding. So y is equal to 1, and this is going to remain. Oops, sorry, y'all. So that would be y equals 1, and I can leave it in inches, 1 inch. And then I know that these are also the same, which means they're also equal. So 41 equals x plus 6. And then if I cut this one in half and isolate the x by subtracting, x is going to equal 35. And so I could say over here, x equals 35 degrees, right? And I'm going to stop there and do part 2 in a different video because it's easier to upload that way. All right, so I'll see you in a minute.